This is MBC Network News.
Tonight on the MBC Network News, Democratic presidential contenders pull no punches as all eyes are on next week's Iowa caucus. Also tonight, find out which black lawmakers are throwing their weight behind Howard Dean as the presidential hopeful makes promises to the African American community. Plus, what does being shy have to do with fighting off the virus that causes AIDS? The results of an unusual new study.
Good evening, I'm Gordon Graham.
And I'm Val Bracey. This is the NBC Network News for Tuesday, January 13th, 2004.
Thanks for joining us.
With 6 days to go until the Iowa caucus, the political temperature in the Hawkeye State is climbing. Democratic presidential candidates and their supporters are scouring the state in hopes of winning the hearts and minds of voters there.
Well, the campaigns are also taking off the kid gloves and getting down and dirty in the war of words. Nancy Weiner has a look at who's trying to make points and how they're doing it.
Vermont Governor Howard Dean is going on the offensive and causing a stir with a new TV ad that distances him from the members of Congress he's running against.
The caucus will be held on Monday, January 19th. The primary battleground will then shift to New Hampshire and South Carolina over the next few weeks as each candidate works to collect convention delegates to win the nomination.
President Bush has left a summit in Mexico, but not before making concessions to the United States' closest neighbors. As Ann Compton reports, the gathering was a chance for Mr. Bush to let bygones be bygones.
How will you work with
the day brought a political thaw on the Canadian border, despite his country's stiff opposition to the war in Iraq and a freeze on access to lucrative rebuilding contracts. The new Prime Minister, Paul Martin, got a share in Iraq's future.
Again, Bush promised U.S. officials will closely work with their Canadian counterparts on the mad cow outbreak that infected U.S. dairy cow has been traced to a herd in Canada. Bush stresses that he thinks beef is safe to eat, and he, for one, will keep eating it.
Well, the Supreme Court is giving police wider powers when it comes to using roadblocks. In a 6-3 ruling, the court says authorities should have the leeway to set up random roadblocks to track down criminals. It also says if police use checkpoint stops to get information about recent crimes, then the action does not violate the privacy rights of other drivers.
Coming up on NBC Network News, new research looks at the links between shyness and AIDS.
And people are still dying to lose weight. You're watching NBC Network News, the urban voice.
In health news tonight, a new study on AIDS makes a connection between certain character traits and HIV. UCLA researchers found that shy men with HIV have a lower resistance to AIDS. As Leanne Melendez reports, it has to do with a chemical in the brain that makes the disease grow 10 times faster.
Chad Campbell is HIV positive. He describes himself as introverted.
Well, it's now 14 minutes after the hour, and it's a problem that probably started the day the car was invented. How to keep young people from driving too fast.
Coming up next in Crosstalk, the widow of the NBA player who died in this wreck joins us to tell us how she's using her personal tragedy to save lives. We'll be right back. In Crosstalk tonight, we take a look at the issue of safe driving. For years, police and insurance industry have been preaching the message that speed kills.
Now that message is being personalized by the widow of Charlotte Hornets player Bobby Phills. He was killed 4 years ago, as you know, while racing a teammate. Kendall Phills is on a crusade to prevent a repeat of that tragedy. Ms. Phills, what prompted you to initiate this anti-speeding campaign?
Well, in 2000, January 12th, I lost my husband.
the father of my children and a community leader in a fatal car accident due to speeding. And my life has not been the same since.
What are you hoping to accomplish?
I would like to get the attention of our young adults and especially our teenagers to let them know the consequences of speeding.
Coming up, meteorologist Andrew Chung has his first check of your midweek weather, and you might call this T-shirt diplomacy. Brazil makes a move to keep its American visitors happy.
Plus, you're looking at a major victory for endangered species in captivity. Stay with us.
Here is the southeast forecast for Wednesday. Mostly cloudy skies for Atlanta and Raleigh-Durham. Rather cloudy for Jackson, but high temperature shouldn't be too bad in the afternoon for New Orleans and Memphis. Highs looking pretty good for Miami and for Tampa. That is a forecast for Wednesday. Back to you, Gordon.
Thanks, Andrew. You know, the two most popular additions to the Fort Worth, Texas Zoo are only 8 weeks old. These jaguar cubs represent a valuable addition to the endangered species captive population. In other voices this evening, we take a look at the impact of former Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill's book on the Bush White House. The president has spent some time this week reacting to the revelations.
At the same time, the Treasury Department is now investigating its former boss to see if any laws were broken. As you can imagine, that's making life interesting for talk show radio hosts like Joe Madison of XM Radio's The Power. He's our guest tonight on Other Voices. Joe, first, just briefly, the Bush administration's reaction to the Paul O'Neill book. What are your listeners saying about that?
Well, it's typical, and I think they totally agree with what Paul O'Neill said in one of his interviews, that the people in the Bush administration are very nasty people with long memories.
On this day in our history, in 1913, Delta Sigma Theta sorority was founded on the campus of Howard University by 22 collegiate women. Their motto, intelligence is the torch of wisdom. In 1953, Christopher Edley Jr. was born in Boston, Massachusetts. He became the first African-American deputy director with the United States Office of Management and Budgets. He is also the founding co-director of the Civil Rights Project at Harvard University. On that same date, Don Barksdale became the first African-American person to play in an NBA All-Star game representing the Baltimore Bullets. In 1979, a commemorative stamp of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was issued by the United States Postal Service in Atlanta, Georgia. It was designed by Jerry Pinkney. In 1982, Major Leaguers Hank Aaron and Frank Robinson were elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. That is this day in our history, January 13th.
We typically think of world record setters as people who achieve great feats of ability or endurance, but that's not always the case. In fact, thousands of Chileans just got into the Guinness Book of World Records by kissing almost 9,000 men and women gathered in the capital of Santiago.
And that's the NBC Network News for tonight. Thanks for joining us.
We always enjoy hearing from our viewers, so if you'd like to drop us a line, please do so. The address is news@mbcnetwork.com.
And we'll be back tomorrow. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.